Welcome to the first chapter of the reading Lockwood & Co., The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroid. I welcome all. This is the book jacket. A sinister problem has occurred in London. All natures of ghosts, haunts, specters, and spirits are appearing throughout the city, and they aren't exactly friendly. Only young people with physique abilities are required to see and eradicate these supernatural foes. Many different physique investigation agencies have cropped up to handle the dangerous work, and they are in fierce competition for one another. In The Screaming Staircase, the plucky and talented Lucy Carlyle teams up with Anthony Lockwood, the charismatic leader of Lockwood & Co., the small agency that runs independently of any adult supervision. After an assignment leads to both a grisly discovery and a disastrous end, Lucy, Anthony, and their sarcastic colleague George are forced to take part in the perilous investigation of Comby Carley Hall, one of the most haunted houses in England. Will Lockwood & Co. survive the Hall's legendary screaming staircase in the Red Room to see another day? Alright, let's start the first chapter. 1. The Ghost. Chapter 1. Of the first few hauntings I investigated with Lockwood & Co., I intend to say little, in part to protect the identity of the victims, in part because of the gruesome nature of the incidents, but mainly because, in a variant of igneous ways, we succeeded in messing them all up. There! I've admitted it! Not a single one of those early cases ended as neatly as we'd wished. Yes, the Mortlake horror was driven out, but only as far as Richmond Park, where even now it stalks by night among the silent trees. Yes, both the grey spectre of Aldgate and the entity known as the Clattering Bones were destroyed, but not before several further and now, I think, unnecessary deaths. As for the creeping shadows that haunted young Mrs. Andrews, too, impalement of her sanity and hemline, wherever she may continue to wander in this world, poor thing, there it follows, too. So it was not exactly an unblemished record that we took with us, Lockwood and I, when we walked up the path to 62 Sheen Road on that misty autumn afternoon and briskly rang the bell. We stood on the doorway with our backs to the muffled traffic, and Lockwood's gloved right hand claps upon the door-bell. Deep in the house, the echoes faded. I gazed at the door, at the small sun blisters on the vanish and scuffs of the letterpress, at the 4 diamonds panels of frosted glass that showed nothing beyond except for darkness. The porch had a forlorn and unused air, its corners choked with the same sodden beech leaves that littered the path and lawn. "Okay," I said. "Remember our new rules. Don't blab about what you see, don't speculate openly about who killed who, or how or when, and above all, don't impersonate the client. Please, it never goes well." "That's an awful lots of don'ts, Lucy," Lockwood said. "I've plenty more. You know I've got an excellent ear for accents. I copy people without even thinking." "Fine. Copy them quietly after the event. Not loudly, not in front of them, and particularly not when they're a 6-foot Irish dock worker with a speech impediment, and we are a good half-mile from the public road. Yes, he was quite Yes, he was really quite nimble for his size," Lockwood said. "Still, the chase kept us fit. Sense anything?" "Not really, but I'm hardly like to out here. You?" He let go of the dull pull and made some minor adjustments to the collar of his coat. "Oddly enough, I have. There was a death in the yards sometime in the late hours, under the laurel halfway up the path. I assume you're going to tell me it was only a smallish glow." My head was tilted to one side, my eyes half closed. I was listening to the silence of the house. "Yes, about mouse-size," Lockwood admitted. "Suppose it might have been a vole. I expect a cat got it or something. So, possibly not part of our case, then. If it was a mouse, probably not." Beyond the frosted panels in the interior of the house, I spied a movement, something shivering in the hall's black depths. "Here we go," I said. "She's coming. Remember what I said." I said. Lockwood bent his knees and picked up the duffel bags beside his feet. We both moved back a little, preparing pleasant, respectful smiles. We waited. Nothing happened. The door stayed shut. There was no one there. As Lockwood opened his mouth to speak, we heard footsteps behind us on the path. "I'm so sorry!" The woman emerging from the mist had walked to us slowly, but as we turned, she accelerated into a token little trot. "So sorry," she repeated. "I was delayed. I didn't know you'd be so prompt." She climbed the steps, a short, well-padded individual with a round face expanding in middle age. Her straight ash-blonde hair was pulled back in a no-nonsense manner by clips above her ear. She wore a longish black skirt, a crisp white shirt, and an enormous wool cardigan with sagging pockets at the sides. She carried a thin little folder in her hand. "Mrs. Hope?" I said. "Good evening, madame. My name is Lucy Carwell. This is Anthony Lockwood of Lockwood and Company. We've come about your call." The woman halted on the topmost step but one, and regarded us with wide gray eyes in which all the usual emotions figured. Distrust, resentment, uncertainty, and dread. They were all there. They came standard in our profession, so we didn't take it personally. Her eyes darted back and forth between us, taking in our neat clothes and carefully brushed hair, the polished rapiers glittering at our belts, the heavy bags we carried. It lingered long on our face as she made no move to go past us to the door of the house. Her free hand was thrust deep into the pocket of her cardigan, forcing the fabric down. "Just the two of you?" she said at last. "Just us. You're very young." Lockwood ignited his smile. Its warmth lit up the evening. "That's the idea, Mrs. Hope. That way it has to be." "Actually, I'm not Mrs. Hope." Her own wan smile, summoned in an involuntary response to Lockwood's, flickered across her face and vanished, leaving anxiety behind. "I'm her daughter, Susie Martin. I'm afraid Mother isn't coming." "But we've arranged to meet her," I said. "She was going to show us around the house." "I know." The woman looked down at her smart black shoes. "I'm afraid she's not willing to set foot in the house. The circumstances of Father's death were horrible enough, but recently the nightly disturbances have been getting too persistent. Last night was especially bad, and Mother's decided she's had enough. She's staying with me for now. We'll have to sell, but obviously we can't do that until the house is made safe." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Which is why you're here." "Excuse me, but shouldn't you have a supervisor here?" "I thought an adult always has to be present in an investigation. Exactly how old are you?" "Old enough and young enough," Lockwood said, smiling. "The perfect age." "Strictly speaking, madame," I added, "the law states that an adult is only required if the operations are undergoing training. It's true that some of the bigger agencies always use supervisors, but that's their private policies. We're fully qualified and independent, and we don't find it necessary. In our experience," Lockwood said sweetly, "adults just get in the way, but of course we do have our license here if you'd like to see them." The woman ran a hand across the smooth surface of her neat blonde hair. No, that won't be necessary. Since Mother clearly wanted you, I'm sure it will be fine." Her voice was neutral and uncertain. There was a brief silence. "Thank you, madame." I glanced back towards the quiet waiting door. "There's one thing. Is there someone else in the house? We rang the bell when we rang the bell. I thought." Her eyes rolled rapidly, meeting mine. "No, that's quite impossible. I have the only key." "I see. I must have been mistaken." "Well, I won't delay you," Mrs. Martin said. "Mother's filled out the form you sent her." She held out the Manila folder. "She hopes it will be useful." "I'm sure it will."